Wait for it. Wait for it, and we're live. Hey, all you crazy sci-fi and fantasy fans. It's time for your daily dose of shenanigans over here at the Blasters and Blades podcast. Just a couple of nerdy veterans, a Stabby chaos coordinator, and one chief shenanigator geeking out over our science fiction passions and fantastical fantasies. A place where magic is king, the sky is the limit, and space is the place. We are the podcast that puts the fun in dysfunction. So without further ado, we're going to let our guest, Mr. Joe Salem, introduce himself to our listeners and viewers at home. Is it
Salem? It's Salem. Just
okay. Oops.
No, it's okay. It's my pen name is Joe Salem. I'm a writer of technothrillers, as well as sci-fi, alt history, and some horror. I've got one series that's the Aerostorm series, and I've got short stories with Raconteur Press that are alt history, and a couple other independent short stories. I've got a new short story coming out this Friday that's in the Killer Kaiju collection,
which will be out by the time this episode airs, dear listener. So,
sorry, yeah, we're time traveling here.
Absolutely. So, what can you tell us, aside from the fact that you write techno-thrillers, what can you tell us about yourself? Is there a reason you are drawn to the thrillers?
Yeah, I've always liked techno-thrillers. I mean, I've rotated through different genres that I like to read, and I think techno-thrillers were one of the earliest that really had me completely enthralled for years when I was in high school. And the first Tom Clancy books, and then the came out, and I loved it. And it changed me from reading sci-fi to thrillers, and then kept me off sci-fi for 5 years. And the reason I started writing that was kind of current events. I've worked in the oil field for 30 years. And so I did try and write back when I was very young, but nothing was ever accepted. And during COVID, I had to work nights. They basically fired everybody I was working with, so I had to cover the night shift for a good 3 or 4 months. And there was actually nothing happening at all. So I was just sitting there, had to just log in for a meeting, and then I had to sit there for all night in case something happened. And so I started playing a game, which was a naval warfare simulation. And it was cool, but it was very complex. And it was very technical as well. So I started reading about the current technical specs for the F-35 and other modern aircraft. And then the next night, the company blocked Steam, so from the VPN. So suddenly I couldn't actually play that game, and I had been reading a lot about it. So I just started writing out a scenario and pounding out words, and before the morning I had 5,000 words, and then I kind of did the same thing the next night, and then the next, and the book starts with a war starting in the Western Pacific, and an aircraft carrier sunk. And initially I had written it that the Bonhomme Richard was sunk in the Western Pacific. But then this was in May 2020, and the Bonhomme Richard actually burned up in San Diego, which was kind of weird. So I rewrote that, and then I just continued writing, and with the CNN playing in the background, because the dog has to be entertained as well. He was working nights with me. And when suddenly the riots began, the Summer of Love riots. And I'm writing this book, and I'm thinking, what if these riots aren't spontaneous? What if an enemy state is actually manipulating us, manipulating social media, and causing these riots to happen. And if someone had control of the internet, could a foreign power control us and cut us off from one part of the country, or cause the country to start fighting? And that became the theme of the book, and that's why the cover really captured the theme, which is it's a combat between us and the Communist Party, but the U.S. is cracking in the middle. So I continued writing, and then had most of a book finished by the end of summer, and I gave it to my brother to read, and he looked at it and said, "Yeah, I should hire an editor and hire an agent." And I did neither. I just edited the book myself. And when the Russian invasion of Ukraine happened, I thought, well, I should publish this before this story becomes alt history. And I hit publish, so I learned several valuable lessons there, which is never ever self-edit a book. And the first 5 reviews were brutal, like hire an editor. So that's I re-edited myself, and then I hired somebody. And so the version that's there now is follow the instructions of my brother. He's always right.
We won't tell him you said that.
He knows. So yeah.
So
sorry, go ahead.
Were you always a reader, though? I mean, like, did you start reading young? Because I feel like Technothrillers, Tom Clancy, that's something that's a little bit more mature of a read, just because the density of what he's writing.
Yeah, I was always reading. I always had a book in my hand. My problem was I would read the book and not pay attention in class, which doesn't really It didn't endear me to teachers back then, and so they had me in a special needs class until I was about 3rd grade. But I was just reading my books and I was fine. And then someone noticed that I could read.
You were bored, is what the problem was.
So yeah, I was always a reader, and everybody in my family, we always had a book, because my father would just say, "You're bored, get a book." And that's why I chose that pen name. When I made that cover, I initially mocked up my own cover with Joe Salemson, because my father's name was Salem. But the guy that did the cover said that's too long. It looks better shorter.
Your dad was nicer than mine. When I told my mother I was bored, she said, "Only boring people are bored. Here's a chore." so we learned not to tell her we were bored, because we didn't want extra chores.
That's right. That was also said too. Yeah.
Yep. So, all right. So before we get too deep into this discussion, we're going to do the religion question. So are you ready for this?
Yes.
All right. Star Wars, Star Trek, or Firefly?
Star Trek.
Okay. What is it about Trek that appeals to you?
If you had asked me when Star Wars first came out, I would have said Star Wars. But Star Trek has kind of endured over time, whereas beyond the first 3 movies of Star Wars, I really don't care for it. Star Trek has everything. It's the movies are really excellent, but the series, you can do anything with those series. You can make it it's just a plot device of people going into where no man has gone before. It's and Firefly. I love Firefly, but it's just 1 season, and really can't.
Have you seen the news that they're going to be doing another season via cartoon?
I did. That should be good. I'll watch it. Yeah.
I will. I'm not a huge fan of cartoons, but I'll probably still give this a watch just because it's Firefly. So, all right. And because we are polytheistic here at the Blasters and Blades podcast, Game of Thrones, The Wheel of Time, or Chronicles of Narnia.
Well, the Game of Thrones books, I really, until the last one, I really loved them. I mean, when I was on a rig in New Mexico, and I stopped off to visit my sister, and she gave me Storm of Swords, back in '99 or so, and I read the whole thing straight. It's like 800 pages. I don't think I ate for 36 hours. It's a good diet program if you have a book that's that good. So I thought it would. I really love those books. I never read the Wheel of Time, and Narnia I read when I was young, but it's more of a. I think I'll stick with Game of Thrones. I think we'll see who's going to finish the series. The TV show was so disappointing. I try to forget that it happened.
Yeah. That is I think he just didn't know where to end it, so he was letting the studio writers give him an ending. I think he wrote himself into a corner.
Yeah. I mean, it's so many threads. It's an almost impossible task if you're not catching it with a 30-hour day.
And this is the danger of such a long lag time between, because you forget I'm sure, what he's written. So,
yeah.
All right. So one of the crying shames of adulthood is we stop asking each other the important questions. So thanks to the generosity of our sponsors, we are bringing that back. And I'm going to ask you, sir, what is your favorite dinosaur?
Stegosaurus.
Okay. Is there a reason, or just, it's kind of cool?
It has a thagomizer on the tail, and it's got a, I feel like the far side. I don't know. I always liked it. It's a
good enough reason. Okay. So we are civilized human beings here at the Blasters and Blades podcast. We are no longer knuckle dragging troglodytes. So we ask you, sir, coffee or tea, and how do you take it?
I'm a coffee addict, but I can't drink the amount that I used to drink. I made the mistake one time at a physical of telling the doctor how much coffee I drank, and he did that shock face that doctors do, like when you tell them too much truth. He recommended I cut back, so I generally drink mostly tea now, and okay. I drink black or with sweet milk.
Okay. So we ask all of our guests who come on that are veterans this question. And so your bio mentioned that you served in the U.S. Air National Guard. So do you feel like your time in uniform affects the way you tell stories?
Yeah. I mean, that was my earliest exposure to BSing. I mean, I think I was pretty sheltered. So once I got back from basic training in tech school, you hear a lot of different stories working with people on the flight line and back in the engine shop. So I think, yeah, it did. The first version of the book, I used people I had met there for character names, just so I could keep track of how they looked and acted, because there were so many characters. I mean, the Air National Guard is interesting because most of the full-time technicians are ex-active duty, and they have 20 years experience, so they know everything, and you're working with them. As a weekender, you really know nothing. I didn't really learn anything until I worked there full time for a year as a civilian technician. And there it's different, because instead of having 4 or 5 people changing an engine as weekenders, it's just 2 people, and things happen much faster. So it's I don't know. It was a lot of 20-year people that had left active duty and went to part-time, and there were a lot of stories.
Okay. Do you feel like that you draw from people still, or was that something that you did early on and you kind of phased out of that?
I kind of phased out of that. I just I think it was pretty much the first night I was writing, because the first thing I wrote was a jet engine mechanic on Guam while ballistic missiles are raining down on Guam from China. So it was kind of a self-insert, I guess. That because you take to get out to the flight line or to the end of runway or someplace, you take a 6-pack truck and you ride out there and you work on the aircraft. And I was looking at the map of Guam, and all the aircraft spots are far away. So you'd have to. It's not a normal ramp like where everything's close to the hangar. You have to drive far away to get to the aircraft and work. And I was just imagining if you're there at night and giant 2-ton missiles are dropping down at hypersonic speeds. And I tried to write that.
So do you feel like it changes the way you engage with content as a reader of the thrillers, of the sci-fi, having served in uniform yourself?
Certainly. I mean, if I'm not a pilot, I mean, the most closest I ever got to being a pilot was riding in the back seat of a B model F-15 going down to the trim pad. So it does inform me as a reader if something doesn't fit. If something's just grossly wrong, but most of the time I try to just enjoy the books, because if you start to engage the editing brain, then it's really hard to get past the trying to think what's going to happen, and did they do it correctly, and did they execute the book correctly. So I try not to even engage that part of my brain. I just read books for pleasure. And
so do you, like you mentioned that you write techno-thrillers now because it's sort of where the muse goes for you. Do you plan on writing other things? Like, do you have dreams of the great big, epic fantasy novel, or, the earth-shattering next big space opera? Like, do you have other interests, or do you think you're going to stick with techno-thrillers?
Well, I'm working on a sci-fi novel, and I've been working on it for 2 years, and it's in progress. And one of my favorite books is, or my favorite authors is John Ringo, and in one series he takes humans from being on Earth to space. And
that's a fun trope.
And so I want to write that. I would like to try and write that story. So it's in progress. I've been writing a lot more short stories the past year and a half, and whenever there's a deadline to submit, then that kind of goes to the front of the line for writing.
Short content is fun. So I understand the allure, and you can explore all kinds of crazy, wacky ideas and then move to the next thing. Although there is a danger, because I've never written a short story I couldn't envision a 12-book arc for. And obviously you only have so much time in a day. Right? So
they expand. You think, oh, this in 6,000 words, and then next thing you're at 11,000 words.
We call this mission creep in the military. So, all right. Well, I want to get into talking about the Technothriller because technically it's not speculative fiction, which is generally what we focus on, but it is military. You were military, so that fits that part of our branding. So I said, yes, let's do this because it sounded fun. But so I'm going to pause for a moment while we shamelessly shill for the man, and then we're going to come back and we're going to dive into the series that brought us here. So we have a little bit more time to talk about it.
35 awesome stories started by one kick-ass meme. It started as a joke. Storm Area 51, they said. They can't stop all of us, they said. But all laughter has stopped when the U.S. Air Force mobilized and pulled out the big guns. However, relentless mockery and derision by the media and the powers that be pushed the dweebs and alien enthusiasts too far. What else were they supposed to do? They said why not and showed up, determined to find out what secrets were hidden behind the walls of the clandestine government facility. Are you brave enough to buy this anthology today? If you are, find out what the government wants to keep hidden. Read Storming Area 51, a Bayonet Books anthology.
All right. Thank you for sticking with us through that commercial interlude. And so with that out of the way, we're going to talk about Aerostorm, a modern Pacific War techno-thriller. And I'm going to throw that cover up. And so technically, the title I just read, Aerostorm, is book 1. But if you look at Amazon, it will be listed as book 2 because they don't do 0.5 editions like other servers or other providers where you can do a short story between books and put it as like a 2.5. That's not available on Amazon. In addition, you can't do a 0.5 for a prequel. So it lists Aerostorm as book 2 because this is listed Aero Guardian Strike as book 1, but this is the prequel. So let me throw the other cover up. But what can you tell us about this universe? Can you give us like the Reader's Digest version of what Aerostorm is?
Yes, these 2 books are kind of telling the story of a Pacific War. And it starts with a space war that's happening without most people knowing that it's happening. And I kind of, in Aerostorm, when I wrote that, I assumed that GPS would be taken out by a space war. I mean, everything in the military now kind of depends on GPS. And without it, we would struggle, and which would be very bad. So I had written a section about the invasion of Taiwan, and that kind of stayed on the cutting room floor. And someone in a review said that there's no way a space war could take out GPS. And I thought, well, let me write that. I want to write that story of how, we think we're in control of everything, but for all we know, some very smart people could be working somewhere and working for the Communist Party to develop systems and weapons that could take out our advantage in space. And we wouldn't know it until it started, because we're not all knowing. And so I kind of went back and did a prequel, which to kind of start up the war. And Aerostorm starts off. The space war has already happened, and the hot war has begun. And Guardian Strike starts back before the space war starts. And Guardian Strike the name is just from one of the HIMARS types missiles that China has, which is it's called the Guardian missile. And it's just a plot point that those missiles would rain down on Taiwan to start the actual conflict. So the universe is space war and then hot war. And we assume that the war would just happen over there, that we would be safe here. But for all we know, if we don't have eyes in space, there could be enemy fleets off the Pacific coast. and because all of our crown jewels for space and the most advanced manufacturing and all of our leadership are on the coast. If enemy ships and submarines could be close enough to the coast to launch missiles, we could be in danger and we wouldn't even know it until missiles started raining down. I guess it was a. Go ahead.
I say that sounds like a cheery thought.
Yeah, that's how the story begins. Is missiles raining down, and we think that we're secure and safe here, but the Navy's busy in the Middle East. What's keeping? In another couple of years, we could be at parity for the number of carriers in the Pacific. It would be we would be in trouble before we even know we're in trouble.
That's a scary thought. Do you worry that some of your story points might get dated given the state of the world is constantly changing when you talk about near future storylines?
I made certainly, because really writing science fiction would be smarter because you could just put it 150 years in the future and you go whoop, 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 with warp speed and stuff. It'd be so these books are really happening tomorrow, and I did make some assumptions that rioting would probably happen every election year, and it would be a commonplace occurrence every couple of years to have massive riots breaking out. So yeah, it's but some of the things I think are still, most of the story is still dead on. When I wrote it in 2020, the Chinese had 2 J-20 prototypes, and in the story I had that they had aircraft in the dozens or hundreds for their stealth fighters, and right now China has dozens or hundreds.
So did you use existing technology, or did you add new tech since it's near future?
These existing technology, but I didn't think that quadcopters would actually work if you have quadcopters work great if neither side has airplanes and artillery that can hit the other side. But if you have 2 modern militaries, quadcopters are just going to get shot down and taken care of. So Aerostorm, I just kind of invented a system where if you take the same kind of control system that you use for a lot of quadcopters and mated that with anti-tank guided missiles. So
do you factor in drones as well?
Yes, I just included drones as for command and control, and when drones are ubiquitous, somebody could see everybody. Everyone that's walking around on the battlefield will be visible, and we're kind of going to depend on. We've got magic rays to shoot down drones, but if it's an actual missile coming at you, you can't shoot it down. You just, so if you put a control system, I guess I got carried away with tech, but kind of made a control system with ubiquitous drones and visibility, and so that just a few soldiers could fire dozens of missiles and take out a battalion of tanks. And
okay, how far out? Do you see this going as a long-running series, just a couple of books? Do you have an arc already planned for this?
Yes. So this would be really the second a second trilogy, and there's another book called Dark Straits. That's a war in the Mediterranean against Russia, with a spy subplot. And so and I actually wrote that book second. After I finished Aerostorm, I just kept writing, and I just wrote a story about post-Ukraine war. 2 American destroyers go on a Freedom of the Seas cruise in the Black Sea and get attacked by Russia, and what happens then. But the problem was the war in Ukraine wasn't over. So I thought 2 years ago that the war in Ukraine would be over by now. So I put that book on the shelf, and I wrote Guardian Strike. And then last year I published Dark Straits. And the next book will be instead of being a techno thriller with a spy subplot, it'll be a spy novel with a techno thriller subplot, where the same super spy, his codename Charlie, is in Poland while Russia is causing trouble there in the Baltics.
Okay. What makes it a techno thriller? I mean, I get the concept of thriller, right? It's generally action, adventure vibe, but what makes it something a techno thriller specifically, since that's what you labeled this?
Well, if it's just a thriller, then it could just be a monster, but a techno thriller, most of the tropes are not just having technology, but kind of going into some detail on it. And so you end up with some probably more exposition than in a typical thriller. And I think Tom Clancy wasn't really the one that started it. It's been, as long as you have that technical explanation in there. So I did try to research everything. If it's just a thriller and you have a monster chasing you, then you just shoot the monster with a silver bullet. If it's a techno thriller, then you take out your Mark 22 laser rifle and cut the werewolf in half, kind of thing. So
okay. Now, does somebody have to be kind of politically aware to follow this story? Like some political thriller books, like if you're not aware of what's going on in the world, it kind of might fall flat. Do you feel like that's the case here, or could they pick this up and, having never watched the news to know what's going on in the rest of the world, would they be able to read this and enjoy it?
I don't know. I don't think so. I think it's it'd be good to know some geography and what the political situations are.
Okay. Was there anything that we didn't cover that you think we need to? Because the hard part about talking about a thriller is obviously like so easy to go into spoiler territory, right? What can you tell us about the main character in this series?
Well, there's probably too many point of view characters. But the main characters are naval aviators, and one of my favorite books growing up was Winds of War, which was a novel that became by Herman Wouk, and he has an entire family that's serving in the Navy during World War II. And really, the World War II would be more the basis for this novel, because we always assume that any war that we're in will just happen over a couple of weeks and then be over. But World War II, the first 6 months in the Pacific, we basically lost every battle, and every ship west of Midway was sunk. So it could be bad. So I tried to make it sort of like Winds of War, where it's a family with a brother and sister who are both naval aviators, and a brother who's serving on one of the ships that gets sunk in the initial opening scene. So, and what happens to them as the war progresses.
Okay. Do we get point of view characters from the enemy side, or is it just all from one side of the political equation?
No, definitely. I think I enjoy writing the enemy point of view characters more. I mean, because they're bad guys, and I wanted them to be full characters, because they're just cardboard cutouts. You don't believe they can win, but I think we should assume that the people that wish us ill are just as smart or smarter than us, so that we're prepared. I wrote the point of view character who's kind of in problems with the political party, and ends up in command with the task of taking down America, which seems like an impossible task. And he tries to do it. He tries to do it the best he can.
Okay. Are there any secondary characters that stick out to you?
Yeah, I tried to give, especially the various pilots. I mean, I only knew pilots as an enlisted person, so the only time I talked to him was in the Airmen's Club, so it's everything you hear is like, and now it's like this, and or they're flying their planes with their hands, and so I tried to give the other characters that are there fighting, some personality as well.
I mean, I watched Top Gun, so I'm practically an aviation expert. So if you have questions, you just call me.
That's me. That's me.
So do you go into the dogfights, or is it mostly like the backroom political maneuvering?
No, it's dogfights. And
fun stuff.
Well, yeah, it's almost at a pew 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 kind of level, because we've gotten used to the situation where we always have air superiority, so we just kind of fly around and shoot down planes at a distance. But if it's actually stealth against stealth, nobody's radar is going to be on, and if it'll always be a kind of a meeting engagement between airplanes. Whoever sees each other with their eyeballs and their systems first gets the advantage.
Okay. Is there anything we didn't cover about these books that you think like listeners need to know about?
There is some cursing, so probably not recommended for under 16.
Okay.
So, sorry, I didn't hear cursing at home, so when I was growing up, so that's kind of a shock to the system when you first get that. So I tried to make that. Then working in the oil field, it's actually even worse. There's some people that can't form a sentence without at least 3 or 4 profanities stuck in there.
Okay. So are these books available? I know I saw the ebook and the print. Are they available in audiobook as well for people that read with their ears?
I turned them on for the AI audiobook. Actually having an audiobook recorded was price prohibitive. So, but the AI sounds reasonable. The only problem is I don't listen to audiobooks. I listen to podcasts. So if anyone has any feedback I would say if it's part of a subscription and you're not paying money, I would try it and let me know how it is on social media.
Okay. So if people wanted to find you on the wild, wild interwebs, where might they do that?
I'm on Facebook. Just search for Joe Salem Books, and I've got a webpage that'll be in the show notes, I guess. And I'm on X. But
Okay.
and I'm on Substack as well.
All right. And this is the part where I remind you, dear listener, to please be kind and speak your mind on the reviewing platforms. Your reviews help the right readers find the right book. It really does make a difference. So with that, you can find us on our Linktree, linktr.ee, Linktree/Blasters and Blaze Podcast. Again, Linktree/Blasters and Blaze Podcast, where we link to all the things, the BitChute, the Rumbles. We've got our YouTube, TikTok, Twitter, Spotify, our Discord, our brand new Substack. We've got our Blasters and Blaze Facebook group and Facebook page. You can email us at blastersandblazepodcast@gmail.com. Again, blastersandblazepodcast@gmail.com. For professional purposes only, people save the shenanigans. Remember Stabby Stab over there on the Instagram, the Twitter, and the email. You can support the show by going to buymeacoffee.com/author J.R. Handley. Again, buymeacoffee.com/author J.R. Handley. Be sure to put in the comment section that is for the podcast, and I promise I will keep my co-host duly caffeinated. They will drink that coffee, brand coffee and tea or hot chocolate until they get high on their own supply. If you want some of that coffee, brand coffee, the link is in the show notes. The discount code is podcast grunts. You get 10% off. We get a little bit of a kickback. It's a win-win, people. And with that, I would like to thank you for spending some of your time with us. For my crazy co-host, I am J.R. Handley, and this was the Blast and Blaze Podcast. We'll be back next week at the same time. We will indulge our love of nerd culture, cheesy jokes, and all things go boom. And with that, I would like to thank you for coming on, Joe. We'll have to have you back.
Thanks for having me. I enjoy your podcast. It's always entertaining.
All right, we're happy to entertain, and we hope you guys were entertained by Joe this time around. And with that, hit the end button.